Are you ready to refocus your energy and live a big and vibrant life that will support your vision and your dreams? This episode with Dr. Michelle May is going to change the way that you see the relationship that you have with food. She is a recovering yo-yo dieter and the founder of amihungry.com. She has a mindful eating program and a training that offers non-diet, weight neutral, mindfulness-based workshops, retreats, and support community for those who are curious about how to mindfully eat. She talked to me about intention and attention, and that is two ways in which she brings people into a mindfulness about what they're eating: intention and attention. Now, we talked about 6 decision points that we can begin to ask ourselves when we feel hungry. If you're curious and would like more, you can go to her website, amihungry.com. You can also get her book, Eat What You Love and Love What You Eat by Dr. Michelle May. You can go to her website and download chapter 1, which will give you a little insight into what her book is all about. And it can and will change the way we approach eating. And it was really interesting because when I was chatting with her, I said something about being in control of what I'm eating. And she challenged that and changed it and said, no, 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 you're in charge. You're not in control. In control feels too tight, too much responsibility, but being in charge with choice, that feels better to most people. So if you want to get in charge and learn how to move away from ineffective dieting and to eat what you love and to love the food that you're eating and to move off of the yo-yo diet and the restrictive eating, Dr. May will show you how to resolve mindlessness and emotional eating and transform it and to create a vibrant and healthy, beautiful life that you want. Dr. May, it's so great to see you. I have so many questions about Am I Hungry and what and how and why and where and when we eat what we love and love what we eat. If you could just introduce yourself to the audience, that would be awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Lori. So I am Dr. Michelle May, but please call me Michelle.
Okay.
I am a retired family physician and a recovered yo-yo dieter. I actually started yo-yo dieting in my preteens, and I dieted all the way through high school, middle school, college, medical school, and into my medical practice. And I realized that a lot of my patients were also yo-yo dieting. Many people do. And so I thought, gosh, if I could have all this training and education and still not be able to manage this, and my patients are running successful businesses and families, and they're still struggling, maybe the problem isn't us, but what we're trying to do. And so that eventually led me to create Am I Hungry mindful eating programs and training. And we are just now celebrating our 26th year in business of helping people heal their relationship with food.
Oh, well, congratulations for 26 years of changing people's lives. That's really important. Now, what I like about your what you're saying, Michelle, is, you said, started yo-yo dieting early in your life. And One thing I've always been curious about, and maybe you can answer this from your own experience or just even the stories that you've heard from other people and people that have gone through your programs, but what are we hearing at a young age that creates this choice or a decision to begin the yo-yo diet? Like, what happens to someone when they're preteen that gets them in a mindset or instills a belief that says this is how you need to do and live your life?
So that is such a great question. And I think we have a general understanding of how powerful body image disturbance is in teens, particularly women, but men are affected by it as well,
Yeah.
young boys. And unfortunately, I mean, I'm 62 years old. This was 40, 50 years ago that I started this.
Yeah.
And it's our culture is a very much outside in
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
It's very much about how you appear to the world. You know, do you look like, do you meet the ideal beauty standards? And that affects people in a lot of different ways. Age is certainly a big factor. Body size is a big factor, but skin color, hair color. I mean, there's so many things, the clothing you choose to wear, etc. And I think part of my big personal shift has been to really move to an inside out approach where I am really thinking in terms of how I'm showing up in the world
Mm.
because of who I am on the inside. And that's a hard transition to make because we're bombarded with messages about how we should look. And
Right.
unfortunately, that very often is one of the factors that leads us down the path of disordered eating and a tremendous food focus, a tremendous body focus. And unfortunately for women, it distracts us from really living these full, vibrant lives that we're craving.
Well, and it's really interesting because, like, for me, sometimes when I go to eat something, I'll immediately bloat. It happens to us, a lot of us, where we have something, or maybe it's just that time in your cycle or whatever is happening to you where you do something with food and it creates a different response than you want.
Mhm.
So you check yourself in the mirror and you go, like, I can't wear those pants because I'm feeling gassy or I'm feeling bloated. And immediately this story begins to take shape. What's
Yeah.
the equation here that can move us to a different point on the continuum?
I chose mindful eating ultimately to it helped me resolve my own eating challenges,
Yeah.
and it has helped thousands of people that I've worked with finally find a peaceful relationship with food in their body
Yeah.
because mindful eating is inside out. It is the antidote to our world that says you have to look a certain way, you have to eat a certain way, you have to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
And here's how. So let's use your example of the bloating
Sure.
because honestly, our program is not focused on changing your body size. Our focus is on giving you a peaceful, healthy, natural relationship with food that allows you to free up your energy to go do all the other things. But let's use this example of
Mm.
this bloating.
Okay.
That is a very physical symptom that you get. Now you're looking in the mirror to check it, but the truth is, you know from the way that you feel that you have reacted to something that you've eaten or a combination of things. I mean,
Right.
that's a whole medical discussion that we won't have right now, but
Yep.
you notice this feeling.
Yep.
The outside in approach is, oh, you look bloated, you can't go to that party, you can't wear those pants, people are
Right.
going to judge you,
Right.
right? The inside out approach is, what did I eat today? What's different today than yesterday when I felt better? Oh, yeah, I'm premenstrual, or oh, I ate too much cruciferous vegetables or whatever. I mean, all of a sudden, mindfulness is about curiosity, not judgment.
That's it. That's I think that's why I mentioned the bloating, because we look more to the external and
Yes.
what's happened after. And I think what you're asking us to do is to discover mindful eating. It's the approach of when you wake up in the morning before you eat, you're beginning to tell yourself the story of how you want to be energized and healthy, and how
Mhm.
you want to feel when you wake up. Is that
Yes.
yes.
So let's step back. So a really great simple definition of mindful eating is eating with intention and attention. Intention, purpose, and that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What is my intention for fueling myself at each meal or snack occasion, right? I'm not a big fan of deciding in the morning what you're going to eat all day. That's
Mhm.
mindfulness is about the present moment, and you can't always know how that day is going to play out. But in the moment, you wake up, let's say you wake up and you think to yourself, oh, I know I should eat breakfast, but I'm not really hungry. Well, in mindful eating, you don't have to eat breakfast the minute your feet hit the floor.
Right.
You might say, okay, well, I know I feel my best when I fuel my body earlier in the day. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, but I'm going to grab a handful of nuts or a protein bar or some fruit or whatever you like to fuel yourself and take it with me. And as soon as I start feeling a little hungry, I'm going to have my breakfast. That's inside out. That is not
Yeah.
rule following. That is not turning to some other expert. It's learning to trust the expert in yourself to feed yourself in a way that is both satisfying and also meets your needs.
Trusting the expert in yourself.
Exactly.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, because
That requires learning to undo a lot of old messages,
right.
right? Because I mean, from the moment we're born, we have other people trying to influence our inner expert.
Right.
Mother who wants to get a little extra sleep, put cereal in the bottle so that we won't wake up as soon, right?
Right.
Or, clean your plate or you don't get dessert, or
Right.
be a good girl, eat all your dinner. There's a lot of messages, even when we're really, really young, that override our instinctive ability to know when we're hungry and when we're full. And when we lose those instinctive signals, or we lose the ability to listen to them and trust them, and then we go out in a world where food is abundant, and we have lots of triggers for eating, all the way from sporting events to boredom to stress. We have a setup where we may consume food for reasons other than our body's internal needs, and then begin to struggle with our eating decisions. So it's certainly messages that we get as children.
Yep.
And then, as we started this conversation, the message that your body is wrong or your
Uh,
body should be different.
yeah.
The minute we start in a restrictive eating pattern where we're changing our ability to eat when we feel hungry, maybe we're not supposed to eat then, or we're supposed to eat on a schedule. We talked about breakfast earlier, but what about intermittent fasting? You shouldn't eat. And so there's a lot of different messages about when we should eat, what we should eat, how we should eat it, how many calories we should burn, how
Yeah.
much we should eat. So there's a lot of focus on making decisions, again, from the outside in. And so that disconnects us from our own body wisdom. It
Yeah.
causes us to distrust our own instinct to know when we are hungry. And an additional piece of this, Lori, honestly, is that our Western culture, or very industrialized culture, has a lot of messages about good food and bad food,
Mm,
as if one food is going to be your downfall. And so when we begin to restrict ourselves, we begin to feel deprived of certain foods,
right.
especially when those foods are part of our family enjoyment, part of our celebrations, part of our traditions, part of the way we provide pleasure throughout our day. And when we're not allowed to eat those foods, we develop these feelings of deprivation that leads to cravings,
Right.
which eventually causes us to give in. And then when we do, we add guilt on top of it, which then causes this whole conversation. My conversation sounded something like, well, you've already blown it. You might as well keep eating and start over tomorrow. Right. So there's the
Right.
cycle you were talking about, this endless cycle of trying to get back on track.
Yeah.
And in fact, trying to get back on track causes us to get off track. It causes us to separate ourselves from that inner wisdom.
Right. And this is really important. I think this is where people, we lose, you said, like, if we can lose the ability to trust our internal signal, then we lose the ability to say what we need because
Mm,
we might be feeling embarrassed, we might be feeling shame, we might be feeling, and let's be honest, so many people struggle in secrecy and in
yes. Yes.
silence. So it feels like you're out of control in some aspects.
Mhm.
Therefore, I better not talk about it because this is something that I'll just keep private. And then
It's shameful.
it's
It creates shame.
totally like
Yeah.
I don't belong. And part of that, again, when we talk about what we're seeing on media, we look we're we see what the perfect life should look like, and it should look a certain way.
Right.
And when you don't, and your house or your life doesn't look that way, there is a story that happens. And some people don't have, they've lost the signal to
Mm,
where their compass is, to that trueness of where they are. And so I think what you're saying here is learning to trust yourself and to break free from the cycle of repetition and that narrative in our heads that says go external, find something external. And what you're saying is no, 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 no,
go
let's
inside.
move inside of ourselves
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
find what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Lori.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, I will say I'm becoming conscious as I'm listening to you rephrase what I said.
Hmm.
I'm becoming aware that people might be sitting back and thinking, "Well, how do you do that?" Or, "What are
Exactly.
you talking about? That sounds so woo-woo or so." And so one of the things that Am I Hungry added to this conversation, because this is becoming a more common conversation now. There's awareness that diets don't work. They
Right.
haven't worked for 100 years.
Yeah.
And if anything, people are worse off than they ever were. And it's not just because of our food environment.
Mm.
I think it's also compounded by this obsessive focus on changing our bodies and eating right and all of this. I think we've pretty much left the rails. And so
Mm.
one of the things that I wanted to bring to the table was a little bit of structure, not diet structure, not
Mm.
rules, not weighing, measuring, and counting, but a little bit of structure to help people with the internal decision making process.
Love it.
So we use something called the mindful eating cycle.
Okay.
Mindful eating cycle. So it's mindful eating, and it is a cycle because we go through this process multiple times every day.
Okay.
And it includes 6 decision points that we make every time we eat, mostly unconsciously until we become mindful, which is the purpose of the cycle.
Mm.
And so those decision points are, why am I eating in the first place? That's what you were talking about, that purpose, that intention
Okay.
that you have before you eat. When do I feel like eating? That's the point of awareness. Oh, I want to eat that, or oh, let's stop and get ice cream, or whatever the thought is. It's
Yeah.
just simply a thought at that point.
Okay.
And then what do I choose to eat?
Okay.
How do I eat it? How do I consume it? In other words, am I sitting down? Am I driving my car? Am I eating, you said, secretly or differently?
Great.
So the how. The next decision is, how much do I eat? In other words, when do I stop?
Yeah.
And then the last and very important decision point is, where do I invest the energy I consumed? So there's an immediate where of, how do I feel immediately? You were talking about bloating. Okay, that's where. Where did this energy, this food I consumed go? How did it affect my body?
Yep.
And then there's a bigger where, which is, what am I doing with my life? What do my relationships look like? What does my work look like? What is my self-care? What does my movement look like? I mean, there's all kinds of pieces to that. And interestingly, why you're eating in the first place will affect every single other decision in the cycle.
Hmm. Okay, so this is interesting because it's a recap of the 6 points. Why you're eating in the first place, when do I feel like eating, what do I choose to eat, how do I eat it, how much do I eat, where do I invest my energy, the energy that I consume, and what does my overall life look like?
Hmm?
So interesting, because our lives are quite sedentary in some ways, sitting a lot. We're having our meetings a lot over calls and videos and those kinds of things. And that goes to my point of the last point that I made, where I'm saying sometimes we think we're supposed to eat this huge meal when we've been sitting all day and haven't moved our bodies, and
Right.
that does not create in most people a very good feeling. So the
Mhm.
question that you're asking, at the overall question, which is, what does my life look like, can actually shape all of these areas as we begin to use our decision tree to make proper decisions, healthy decisions, intuitive decisions out of the life that you want to live versus this other
Yeah.
drive, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And ideally, when you're still connected to these signals, a baby or a young child, for example, when they are really active in a day or they do sports at school or something, they're more hungry.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many adults have become disconnected from their body's signals about how much fuel they need at any given time.
Yep.
And they are following maybe a traditional rule that you're applying to, you're sort of referring to here about dinner is a large meal,
Yes.
or that I have to eat, it's the end of the day and I should eat meat, potatoes, vegetable, blah, blah, dessert, etc. And what you're saying is exactly what I'm implying, is that we become intuitively reconnected to our body's needs, and we notice, I'm not that hungry this evening. We had a big lunch at work, the surprise party for so and so, and I really don't need that much food right now. I'm going to
Mm,
have, just a little bit and I'll be fine. So it's about disconnecting from all the cultural messages, the
mm.
rules, the outside in messages, and reconnecting with my own body's wisdom about when, what, how much to eat and where to invest my energy.
Well, and I think it's also, to add to that, it's refocusing. It's a refocus of your energy to not, because food fuels you. But
Yes.
if you're living a good life and you are living out of a mindful approach, that fuels your action. That's the fuel. And you will, as you say, make good decisions based out of this orientation of
Mhm.
inward focus versus external focus.
Yes, and so that's actually an important point. Our cultural messages around food have a lot more to do with being good rather than feeling good.
Right.
And so when we can reorient ourselves to how our body responds to certain foods or certain amounts of foods or the
Right.
timing of eating, when we can reorient ourselves to the feedback that our body gives us when we make decisions, we can begin to learn. We're not going to do it perfectly every time, and that's okay. We make mistakes, we
Yeah.
learn from those mistakes, but we're learning on our own based on our own body's feedback.
Hmm. And which is why, am I hungry is a really good question to ask. And
A lot of the people I'm working with, they've been yo-yo dieting for so long
mm,
that they are disconnected and often using food for other reasons and
right.
not really sure why. And they keep trying to start another diet to get back in control, as you talked about earlier. And so they vacillate from being in control to out of control, in control to out of control. And the work that I do with them is really around helping them become in charge, not
Mm,
in control, which requires a tremendous amount of energy, especially if you're starting from out of control, but to be in charge, which means making conscious decisions. So let's go back to your example. A long work day, very intensive. You notice that you feel like eating. That's the when decision point, and that's where I
exactly.
tell people to start. Don't start with why. Trying to figure out why you're eating, that takes experience, that takes
Okay.
practice, and in some cases it takes a coach, right?
Okay. Yep.
But start with when. So notice, oh, I feel like eating. And then you did exactly the right thing. Am I actually even hungry? I mean, I ate a little while ago.
Right.
And then look for the physical signs of hunger. So your body is constantly communicating with you to give you information that helps you take care of it, absolutely constantly communicating with you.
Yeah.
It is an ill of Western culture that we've become disconnected with this information. And again, it's not woo woo, it's very simple. You're thirsty, you need fluid. You're tired, you need rest. You're
Hmm.
hungry, you need food. Well, how do you know you're hungry? We don't think about that very much. And that's something that I have to retrain people to know how to look for it if they've become disconnected from it. But hunger comes from the awareness of your stomach contractions and dipping blood sugar.
Mm. So,
So those,
what
yep,
does
let's,
dipping blood sugar look like for someone?
well, so your blood sugar needs to stay in a certain range to have optimal energy, and it naturally falls as you use that energy through your activities,
Yes.
including brain activities, by the way, right? And so, as it falls, because your brain and your cells are dependent on glucose for energy, you might notice that you're having trouble concentrating or focusing. You mentioned that.
Yep.
You might start to get a little irritable or hangry, right?
Mm-hmm.
You might notice that at extremes that you're even a little shaky or headachy.
Yep.
Your energy is dipping.
Okay.
Now, you can some of those symptoms can come because you're tired or you're bored of what you're doing or you need a break, right?
Yep.
So you can also use your stomach symptoms to corroborate what you're experiencing with your blood sugar symptoms. So, for example, you might notice hunger pangs, like little, hey, start thinking about making time to eat,
Yeah.
or emptiness, or grumbling, or growling. And so that grouping of symptoms of your stomach and your blood sugar dipping, those are pretty good signs that your body is needing fuel. So when you feel like eating, pause for a moment and just check in with yourself. Am I even hungry right now? Or is it possible that this desire to eat is really coming from a desire to leave this project or stand up or do something different for a while or ask for some help or whatever it is. So it
Distraction. Yeah.
literally gives you the opportunity to meet your needs better than food can.
Wow. Yes, I'm really interested in that. So when you talk with people, do people not know what hunger feels like?
Yeah. The people I work with often don't, or they can name it once we talk about it. And that happens for a
Interesting.
couple of reasons. I mean, one is diet culture teaches us to disconnect from hunger. You know,
Right.
you eat on a schedule, don't eat that, or whatever it is. So, and to distrust and disconnect. So that's one reason. Diet culture definitely plays a part.
Hmm.
Secondly, we are busy, we're disconnected from ourselves in general,
Mm,
not noticing our body's signals and needs. And then the third reason it might happen is because sometimes people are eating so regularly for other reasons
right.
that their body never really needs to give them a hunger signal. It
Sure.
would be like, filling up your gas tank every time you see a gas station instead of waiting until your gauge starts dropping.
Sure. And what you're saying is, uh, whatever that is, you have the qualifications and the credentials to help assist that. It's all being redirected to an internal positioning that comes from a connection of, it's a reminding us of who we are, what you were made to do, what your body, the magic of our bodies, and that it will signal if we learn to hear it, if we're learning to listen. I think what I hear is, we have just over time and over multiple outside influences lost our radar. It's not that we've lost the ability, because we all have it. It's not gone. It's just not on the same frequency as maybe it could be, in order to live a really healthy and vibrant life.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. It's really about reconnecting the wires.
Yeah.
That's all. They're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and we can get confused because, like you
Mhm.
say, at a young age, however many years ago, were looking to yo-yo dieting and to solve a problem even back
Mhm.
then. And
I wasn't looking to yo-yo dieting. I was just looking for dieting. I was looking for the answer. The yo-yo part comes from the inevitable disruption of that body trust and body
okay,
connection.
okay,
And some of it is psychological, but a lot of it is physiological as well.
interesting.
When we restrict and deprive ourselves, when we are under consuming food, which is basically the goal of every weight, especially weight loss diet, is to eat less than your body needs. When you're under consuming like that, then your body perceives that as scarcity. It
Mm,
perceives that as a risk of starvation.
okay,
And so, without meaning to, without even realizing it's happening, your body ramps up your hunger signals or your desire to eat. It ramps up the hedonic properties that from eating. In other words, food looks better, smells better, tastes better.
yes,
You lose some of your stop signals, your fullness signals.
huh,
You literally change your metabolism so that your body becomes more efficient, which is great if you're a car and you want a
sure,
more fuel efficient vehicle. But when a body doesn't need as much energy to do the same amount every day, over time that catches up with us. And so the yo yo part of the problem is actually an evolutionary result of us developing in a time when food was scarce and trying to apply those same ideas when food is abundant.
right. Oh, that makes so much sense. So,
And so people like yourself then, Lori,
yeah,
who don't struggle with these issues,
no,
who have these behaviors and for whom it's sort of a mystery why somebody would eat when they weren't hungry all the time or why
right.
would you do that? It's hard for people who haven't lost the ability to listen to their body's signals to really understand why that happens.
Even as a person who doesn't have, this sort of disturbance, you called it a body image disturbance. I don't have that, but I have an emotional one sometimes. And I can think of
Yeah.
specific times in my life
Hmm.
where I've been untethered in that. And the mindfulness part is where I'm captivated, because we're all
Hmm.
human and we can all take a beautiful lesson from learning how to be a little more mindful about
Yes.
what it is that our body needs. It's tuning in. And more importantly, I have three adult kids and one teenage daughter that are looking at me, and I'm an auntie. And I'm saying, okay, the way I behave in the world is being observed. And so,
Mhm.
what that looks like is really important in how I speak about food, my relationship
Yes.
to it, and all of that.
Yes, let's go down the emotional eating path because I think you've hit on something that's really really important here. And that is, and first of all, let me just preface this by saying that emotional eating is part of normal eating. From the time we're born, we are comforted with food. We're held when we're fed. We have cake at birthday parties.
Yeah.
We celebrate momentous events. We celebrate deaths and funerals with food. It is part of it is part of normal eating to have emotional eating
Mm,
where people can become bothered by it or affected by it is when they begin to use food in an attempt to meet more and more of their emotional needs.
right.
So, your example, I call it procrastinating of eating,
Procrastinating? Oh, I love that.
procrastinating when you're starting to use food to avoid whatever else it is that you need to do. That's sort of a natural behavior. Similarly, when people use food because they're bored, here's the
Mm.
thing, it works.
Oh, yeah.
We do it not because we don't know better. We do it because it actually works. You think about boredom eating. When you're bored, the solution to boredom is doing something. Well, eating is doing something.
Yep.
The problem is when you stop eating, you're bored again. And so you have to eat again. And this becomes the cycle of using food more and more and more.
Mm,
So when we begin to become curious about why we're wanting to eat, instead of automatically reaching for food or trying to use willpower to resist it, we get curious.
mm,
Because again, your body is constantly communicating with you about meeting its needs.
yep.
And so it turns out that hunger is the communication that your body needs fuel, but an emotion is communication that your body is needing something else or you are needing something else. So the simple example is boredom. I need something to do. I want to procrastinate may mean I need to take a break, or I might need to break this down into smaller chunks,
Right.
or I may need to ask for some help. And most often in my world, it is I need to give myself permission to stop for just a few minutes or however long, do something else, clear my head, go for a walk, come back clear headed, and start again. But that's hard to do when you've
Right.
got a lot to do or when you have a little touch of perfectionism. When the job isn't done, you
Mm,
can't leave. And
mhm.
then we eat to make ourselves stay at the task instead of just taking the break and then coming back. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
it totally makes sense. It's actually reinforcing the first of the six decision points that we are making, which is why am I eating in the first place? And what
Absolutely.
you're doing is you're saying, if you can ask yourself why, when, what, how, where, if you can bring yourself into those spaces, then you will become curious about what's underneath rather than the immediacy that you feel you need.
Right. Right. And I will add to this that one of the reasons so many of my clients feel out of control around food is that food is wonderful. It meets our
Oh,
fuel needs,
yep.
hopefully our nutrition needs. It adds pleasure and
Sure.
richness to our lives, but it doesn't do that great of a job at all the other things that people use it for. All the entertainment, all the comfort, all the distraction, all
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to use it for too many reasons. And so, because it doesn't work very well, we have to keep redosing ourselves again and again.
Well,
And so,
I would
yeah,
also think, sorry, but I'd also
yeah,
think like we're using it to use it as a filler. Like
yeah,
we're filling an addiction in some ways, where whether it's sugar or like if you're
mm,
thirsty, are you drinking water or are you drinking a soda?
right,
What is the
right,
where are you filling and what are you filling Where's
Mm.
the, um, for lack of a better word, like, where are you hurting?
Where are the missing pieces? What are the holes you're trying to fill? Now, I want it just for clarity. We don't have time to talk about it,
No.
I know, but food addiction is a whole other topic, and I'm
Mhm.
not a big fan of that model because the treatment is don't do that, or
Right.
avoid, and that just doesn't work for people. But I think you said it much, way earlier in this discussion. You said, when you are living a vibrant life, when you are doing all the things that you're meant to be doing and
Yeah.
enjoy doing with the energy that you've consumed,
Yeah.
there are fewer holes to fill with food.
Yep.
And that's what I love about mindful eating, is that
Mm.
diets are all about being good, and mindful eating for me is all about feeling good. And I feel my best when I fuel my body, when I eat the foods that I love, when I love the foods that I eat, when I eat the foods that love me.
Yes.
And then, most important, when I'm not using all my energy obsessing about eat this, not that, or eat less, not more.
Yeah.
And I'm using that energy instead to love my family and play pickleball and yoga and write books and talk to you. It's a
Mhm.
completely different model
Yes.
than many of the messages that we get today.
Well, you're talking about lasting change.
Exactly.
We are in control of our body and our mind. So
In
mindful,
charge.
ah,
In
yes.
charge.
Okay, you're right. See, because
Right.
I think that's the nuance that trips me up.
Yeah.
Like you just you corrected that,
Yeah.
because it is a new way of thinking.
Yeah.
And
And control is power, it's
yeah,
resistance, it's
and
being good. Being
it's
in
also,
charge is decision making.
and control is also tense. I
Yes.
have to stay in control. Okay,
Yes.
so I have to keep on top of all these things in order to stay in control. I think about that, and lots of people feel uncomfortable about being in control.
Yeah.
It's nervous because it takes so much
Energy.
energy. But
Exactly. Being
mindfulness,
in charge is just
well,
okay, I need to make a decision. So, for example, going back to the procrastinating, if you feel like eating chips and you recognize that you're not really hungry,
yeah,
believe me, if your only choice is then don't eat, you've turned it into another form of dieting or restriction.
right,
Instead, it just means you're in charge. If you want the chips, have the chips, but recognize that you're using them for pleasure and distraction. So stop working,
yeah,
sit down,
yes,
put them on a little bowl and eat them mindfully and enjoy them for the pleasure they're giving you, because you don't need the fuel right now. You're
right,
only getting pleasure and distraction.
yes,
So if you eat them while you're continuing to work, now you didn't need the fuel, and you're not getting a distraction,
right.
and you're not getting pleasure. So again, it comes back to the why, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. And it comes back to the choice. I think in charge reflects a little more of a choice. It's
Yes.
choices. I think when I was raising my kids, and it was, we would use words like that, like you're in charge of this, but it was a time frame. It wasn't. It had a little bit more openness to it versus
Mm-hmm.
in control. We tend to take that more in a different direction when we hear that. And so what
Well,
yours,
and you mentioned earlier about your family and people that are observing you. Not only are they observing our behaviors, but the things that we say about food and about controlling food, and that's bad and that's good, or you shouldn't eat that. Those are messages that subtly but consistently undermine their ability to be in charge. When we make foods that children naturally enjoy bad, instead of saying, hey, I like that too. Let's plan to have that, for our snack this afternoon or whatever.
Sure, sure.
When we are more in charge instead of trying to control, we may have some hope of raising children that thrive in our abundant food environment instead of continue to struggle.
Well, and what would you say to someone who is asking you about this, their kid or their family member who loves sugar? Like, how does mindful eating move to the reality that,
Mm.
we've had a lot of sugar in our lives and it is one of the things that we look at?
Right. And again, it's evolutionary that we would like sugar and fat and other energy dense foods
Yep.
or foods that gave us what we needed to survive when food was scarce.
Mm,
So it's not unusual. Now, when you restrict and deprive sugar, you give sugar power. You literally put it up on a pedestal and you spend so much time trying to control it that it actually ends up controlling you. So again, this is a whole other discussion.
and
It's
there's
a
that
it's
word
a
again, that word control.
control.
Yeah.
It's a technique that we teach called fearless eating, where we literally reinstill permission to make decisions about eating. Eat the sugar if you want to, but don't give into it. Don't give up on your diet. Simply be in charge of making the decision without guilt, without punishment, without,
Mm,
going back into the whole I was bad, I shouldn't have done that,
right.
which only adds to more guilt and deprivation. Now, as a parent, it's your responsibility to provide a balance of foods and to do it in a way that shows children that all foods are permissible and that some foods actually help support us to feel better and perform better in our sports or at school or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bigger conversation, but the in my case and in other cases, restriction and deprivation really only leads to more issues with food, not less.
Well, and it doesn't address the why.
It never addresses the
It
why.
doesn't address
And
the
in
why.
fact, most of what's wrong with the way our culture approaches food these days is it's not getting to the root issue.
No.
It's giving you a bunch of external rules that are impossible to follow long term. And so you never build the skills to make the decisions for yourself.
Well, and I would say and add to that though, if somebody is listening and they're saying, I don't when I ask why, I don't even know. I can't even think about the why because if I take the time to ask myself or try to feel it, I don't feel anything. And
Right.
to that I would say it isn't the asking why isn't the question, it's becoming curious and
Yes.
allowing yourself this exploration. It
Right.
didn't this didn't happen overnight, so
That's right.
beginning these 6 decision points are really curiosity. I'm curious as to what I need in the first place.
Mm,
I'm curious as to why I feel like eating. I'm
that's right.
curious as to what to choose to eat to feel and to feed my body. I'm curious as to how I eat it. Like we can apply the curiosity question to all of this.
Absolutely. And that's ultimately the beauty of mindful eating for our world's issues
Mm,
with having an abundant food environment but no internal way of making decisions about eating because there's always more food. So
mm.
it's a process that we teach. It's a process that begins with noticing that you feel like eating, asking whether you're hungry, not to decide if you're allowed to eat, but to help you figure out why you want to.
Oh, help you figure out why you want to.
Exactly.
What is it that you could leave with us that could answer a few more questions for people that can create a feeling of curiosity around mindful eating for themselves?
Let's go back to actually the name of my company is Am I Hungry for exactly this reason. So here's where I would begin.
Mm,
Whenever you feel like eating, pause for a moment, notice that, get curious and ask yourself, am I physically hungry? Am I having the symptoms of hunger that we talked about earlier? Or is it possible that this desire to eat is coming from somewhere else? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? Am I bored? Am I procrastinating? Am I needing comfort? So
Mm.
get curious and then make a decision. Whatever you decide, decide. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Eat if you want to eat, and then check in again. Okay, now how do I feel? Am I still bored? How does my body feel? How did that work for me? And would I do anything different the next time this happens? And so,
Mm.
step by step, we begin to use our body's information to try to interpret its needs and get better and better at it with practice. Can I share? I'm feeling like I should have shown the mindful eating cycle. If any of you want to look at it,
Yep.
you can download the first chapter of Eat What You Love What You Eat. That, and I'll give you the link, Lori, so you can include it in the show
Yep.
notes. But it's amihungry.com
Yes.
slash chapter, you spell that out, one, the number
Yep.
one.
Yep.
So amihungry.com chapter one, it's free. You can look at the mindful eating cycle. It'll show you the 6 decision points, and it'll also help you look at the patterns of eating, restrictive eating, overeating, and instinctive eating, like Lori.
Mm.
If you want to be like Lori, look at the instinctive eating pattern.
Instinctive eating. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I am glad that you're racing off to help someone become curious and that they will begin to touch point with their own curiosity and that they can live a big and vibrant and healthy life that is based in mindfulness. So thank you so much.
Thank you
You
for the privilege. It was
are,
a joy to talk to you.
oh, what a joy. And I will be in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lori. Bye bye.
Bye.